Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What is your cringy moment that haunts you when trying to fall asleep? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. There's some weird song in one of the really old Tony Hawk games where the lyrics say something like, "She's got a demon between her legs with a mind of its own." So, 6-year-old me, while I was at Grandma's, whispered in my mom's ear while pointing at my grandma, "Grandma's got a demon between her legs with a mind of its own." Just thinking I was being goofy. Thinking back on it, no. It's big shots. Because my peers and I were all into the phrase, "do a barrel roll" from Star Fox 64 at the time, I told a friend whose mother had just died that she was doing barrel rolls in heaven now. Ugh. One of my teachers had just announced that he has serious prostate cancer, so naturally I decided to tell him about how my dad had prostate cancer and ended up dying. Not my proudest moment, but 1.5 years later, he's fine and is teaching again. I used to sit naked in this tree at the end of our drive thinking no one could see me, but it is very, very obvious. Like, people aren't going to notice a naked kid in a tree without leaves. I wasn't even high up or anything. Oh God. And my family is too awkward to ever bring something like that up. I bet this soccer ref wanted to give himself a red card. Oof. As a soccer ref, I called an illegal one-handed throw-in on a girl with only one arm. Ooh. Didn't realize until a parent had to point it out to me that she only had one arm. Poor girl couldn't have been older than 14. When I was a kid, a friend brought me to the lake. I had to go to the bathroom, and he told me just to go in the lake. His sister and her friend were swimming next to us, and I said I felt weird. He said it's fine, he's doing it as we speak. So I pulled down my trunks and let a huge turd out. To my surprise, shit floats. Her sister and her friend screamed as they tried to get away from the floating poo. When I was in middle school, there was a lunch line, and the principal would put his hand out in front of you so you wouldn't keep going, cause if not, the little area would get full. But I didn't know that, so when he put his hand in front of me, I just high-fived it and kept walking. I realized what I had done and just pretended it was intentional. Tried to learn some lines last minute when I was playing a king in our school nativity. I effed up the lines and had a mental breakdown in front of the entire school. It was really bad too, full on shaking my arms in anger and screaming "no" with tears in my eyes. I met this girl from Wyoming at a party in Seattle. I am also from Wyoming, so we had all kinds of Wyoming shit to talk about. She's friends with my wife's sister, so it wasn't sexual tension or anything. We were just two Wyomites talking Wyoming. The conversation hit a lull after we covered everything we could cover about Wyoming, and I filled it with the question, "So where are you from?" In high school, popular kids invited me out for lunch, got nervous and pretended to fall asleep in the car on the 5-minute drive to Burger King, and sat in the car quietly while they ate inside. This next post shows you just how easily a nickname can develop in school. My mom had cleaned my coat before school and literally pulled it out of the dryer before I ran to catch the bus. A couple of kids pointing at me on my way and laughing, and I couldn't understand why. It wasn't until I got to school and saw my friend that she pulled my hood forward and brought to my attention that attached to the Velcro of my hood was one of my dad's tighty-whities. I could never live this one down. Long story short, I faked shooting myself in the head because of an inconvenience, like a dramatic "oh, kill me" right in front of a lady whose brother shot himself days before. I once was so lost in a daydream that after coming back from refilling my plate at a buffet, I sat down at the wrong table while another family was still there. I'm a white guy, out drinking with my black coworker and his black friend. We see our manager's manager, also black, and decide to bring him a shot. For whatever reason, I walk the shot over to him. With both the coworker and friend watching, I proceed to give it to the wrong black guy. They gave me shit for days. I worked with a bunch of women as a nurse. We had a float working on the east side of the unit who was male. He called me to discuss a fire needing to be put out, and as we hung up I said, "Thanks, I love you," out of pure habit from talking to my husband on the phone. I turned to the nurse next to me and said, "Did I just tell Doug I love him?" We never spoke of it. That one always makes me cringe. So me and my brothers like to purposefully mispronounce words because we think it's funny and we're lame. Anyways, we were at dinner with family and we were passing the Coke bottle around to serve ourselves, and without thinking I said, "Hey dude, want some cock?" And I immediately realized what I said, apologized, and went straight to my room. I regret it so much. My brothers laughed, but the rest of my family did not. When I was in school for massage therapy, we worked closely with the personal training program. The guy who taught PT was an uber athlete, buff, low body fat, could have been dropped into a Marvel movie on a moment's notice and fit right in. In fact, to another instructor's envious frustration, this guy ran a marathon on a week's notice and finished reasonably well. Most of the MT students liked working on the guy because you could clearly see a lot of the musculature while you were working. It was very educational in that way, and I'm certain many of the girls liked working on him for the obvious reason. One day, I was in the hallway giving a seated massage, and he and his class started filing into a room down the way. Some words were exchanged, and for some reason I blurted out, "Hey teacher, when am I going to have you on my table?" It sounded awkwardly sexual and gay. His class all laughed. I felt incredibly embarrassed, and like a truly decent person, he walked over, pretended it was all normal, asked me what my schedule was, and shook my hand. To this day, I have no idea why those words came out of my mouth in the way they did. I used to eat pedigree dog food to the extent my parents had to lock it up and wear my sister's bikinis. I don't remember these things too well, but I can remember the taste of the dog food, and my mom has plenty of pictures. And yes, I'm a guy. I was in primary school, year 6 I believe, and I would have been about 11 at the time. One day, the deputy principal was having an intense discussion in his classroom during lunch break. He seemed to be acting as a mediator to sort out a conflict between a group of uncomfortable-looking kids who were all standing around him. I happened to be using one of the computers in the room nearby and listened in curiously as I overheard bits of whatever drama was unfolding between them. To this day, I have no effing idea what came over me, but for some reason, I decided it was appropriate to walk over, lean down and slam my palms on the teacher's desk like I owned the place, said, "So, what's going on here?" and looked around at each other, and each of them expectantly like they were actually about to recount the story to me in its entirety. The deputy principal was this stern older guy who was not the type to be effed with. He just looked at me with the most incredulous look on his face for a couple of seconds and blinked. "Well, none of your business." Everyone stared at me in silence for several seconds, and I walked off sheepishly. I still have no idea what came over me that day. This was not normal behavior for me. I still cringe about it occasionally. High school. A boy I liked passed me a birthday invitation. I smiled huge, said thanks, and folded it up in my book only to have him lean over and explain it was for the kid on the other side of me, and I was supposed to pass it. A decade later, and I still cringe. Oof. I have a couple. First off, I was having lunch with my dad's cousin. Her and her husband were already mid-30s, while I was 13, when she asked me what I liked to eat at school. Not paying attention, I thought he asked, "What's your favorite thing about school?" Being a smartass, I answered, "The girls." She rolled her eyes, her husband smiled, and it took me years to realize what I exactly said that day. Lengthy one. We'll put a TLDR at the end. Up until midway through the 3rd grade, I didn't talk in school, ever, to anybody. During kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, it was just because I was scared to. I don't know why. I was just afraid to talk to anybody new. This included teachers, nurses, classmates, etc. So, there was a time in the 2nd grade, I just moved to a new school, which made me even more scared of talking, and I had to take a shit. Like Hershey squirts, flames bursting from the gates of hell levels of diarrhea. My class was doing some group activity which I, of course, worked alone on. So I decided to go to the bathroom by myself, without anyone knowing. I just walked out of the room to go take my shit. After about 10 or 15 minutes of shitting, I hear multiple classmates of mine come into the bathroom screaming my name trying to find me. Didn't know why, refused to come out. I also had major anxiety issues, so knowing they were looking for me for some reason terrified me. so I sat on the back of the toilet after I was done shitting to hide. After a few hours passed, I finally decided to just leave the bathroom. My classroom was right across the hall. I went back in and it was empty, so I just sat down and waited. Eventually, my teacher comes walking in with 2 cops and then absolutely loses her shit and bursts into tears when she sees me. Turned out, when they noticed I was missing, they turned the entire classroom into a search party for me and just couldn't find me. They dismissed all classes for the day for an investigation. They had issued missing child alerts for me and were about to try to issue an Amber Alert with all of my mom's personal info because they tried calling her, she didn't answer, and had just lost custody of me to my dad, so they thought she kidnapped me. It also didn't help that I wouldn't talk, so I refused to tell them where I was or why I left. Had to wait for my dad to take me home and then told him so he could relay it to them. TLDR was a mute, left classroom to go to the bathroom in 2nd grade, caused a school-wide panic, and almost got my mom arrested. I mixed up 2 black coworkers during my first week on the job. In my own defense, they do bear a very strong resemblance to each other in many other ways besides skin color, but I still want to crawl into a hole forever when I think about it. They're both very nice and have hopefully decided not to hold it against me permanently. In high school, one of my best friends was this gay guy, and we did this thing where we would slap each other's asses when we weren't paying attention. No idea why we did this, but anyway. One day, we're meeting up at the movies, and I go up to some guy that I thought was my friend, but no, I smacked the ass of a total stranger. They didn't even really look alike, just had a similar body type from the back. He tried to buy me a drink, and I had no idea what to say while my friend is staring at me in horror. There were tons of witnesses. Also, I lost my retainer in 5th grade and accused my entire class of stealing it. I was freaking out because I knew my dad would flip out at me and make me pay for it. My parents live in the same hometown that I grew up in, and people still remember the story. FML. My brother, 10 years older than me, gave me some of his makeup that he didn't use anymore. I used the lipstick and shortly afterwards got a text from his roommate, my best friend, telling me not to use the lipstick because he has herpes. I ended up going to the doctor for a sore on my lip and told the nurse it could be herpes. The nurse asked where I got it from and I just replied, my brother, before my soul melted out of my body. This next one proves yet again, kids truly do say the darndest things. My husband and I had been discussing a family member of his just before an Independence Day barbecue at our home. The woman at the time, who was the topic of our convo, was going through a divorce but had openly shared with me that she had slept with 3 different guys in a 2-day period who were good friends of her soon-to-be ex. We did not realize our 11-year-old at the time, who has Asperger's, so he has no filter, had been listening in front of the hallway. Fast forward a few hours, and my son is in the pool with her son, and he says, my dad says your mom's like a huge whore. Needless to say, the rest of the barbecue was super awkward, and a good bit of my evening spent on damage control. I'm a hostess at a restaurant, and a family of 25 came out to eat and caused a lot of problems. This was shortly after I'd had a baby, so basically I said F makeup and just ignored how many people said I looked tired. Anyways, the man of the family made 2 of our servers cry and made a scene about everything wrong with the food, drinks, and they were never coming back. He comes by me to pay the check, and he snaps his fingers for me to move along, grunts when I ask him questions, just being a rude F. He drops his wallet, and I pick it up and hand it to him, and he says, thank you, sir. So I just snap at him and tell him that was unnecessary and I'm a woman and it's not funny to call me sir. He was talking to his son behind him who handed him a pen. The whole family witnessed this and they just stifled laughs as I just packed track and apologized. They usually come out during the first week of July. The mom insisted they'd be back and I already asked off to work to avoid them. It still haunts me that I decided to speak up for myself in that moment. F. In 10th grade, my friend and I were in drama class together. We had to do a lip sync together, and we were cringy, huge Green Day fans. We did American Idiot, even borrowed my dad's guitars to do it. My teacher recorded all the performances without me knowing and played it for all her classes a few days later. We were both awkward, chubby girls with dyed green hair on top of it all. I've been out of high school for 10 years, and I'm still red in the cheeks right now thinking about it.